Now on the National League side of things, as I take you to this week of baseball, let's get started with the Nationals and Braves. Now this are the first and second place of the NL East, and the Braves are pretty much the biggest threat to knock the Nationals off their turf. The Nationals that have a great pitching staff and have rode that through most of the season, besides the offensive production of Bryce Harper and company. So let's get started with all that. How they got to this point? Well, earlier in the week, the Braves lost 2 out of 3 to the San Francisco Giants, who still tops the NL West at this point. But I'll get to them in a second. As the Nationals, they struggled a little bit, but they still got through pretty well. As they Actually, no, they didn't because they won 2 out of 3 against the Mets. The Mets are the ones struggling, but I'll get to them in a minute too. But the Nationals did struggle the first 2 games against the Braves. They lost. They gave up 11 runs in a 11-10 game, and then lost 4-0 as Ben Sheets defeated Jackson. However, the last 2 games were won by the Nationals at a count of 5-2 and 9-2 as the Nationals offense carried through those games as Landon picks up his first win of the season, as well as Detweiler picked up his 5th win. And the Braves offense just slowed down at the wrong place at the wrong time, but they still at least got 2 games considering the fact that they were on the road. So all in all, it was an okay week for the Braves, but they're still behind and they're still 3.5 games out of first. They do have a wild card spot though, but it's slipping up a little bit because right behind them is the team that just swept the New York Mets, which I know you're saying, oh, that's not hard to do. But the Mets were actually doing good till this point in the season. And they got swept by the Dodgers of Los Angeles. Yes, the Dodgers who've fallen out of the first place in the NL West are now starting to get their offense together, kind of, sort of. Matt Kemp and Ethier and Lonnie are getting their bats together, and they're making sure that people know that they're still around as they just swept the Mets in a 3-game series on winning on 7. They got a close one 7-6 and 8-5, and then they won kind of decisively 8-3. Now let's get to these 2 teams for a minute here. The Dodgers, I know early in the week they lost to 2 out of 3. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Phillies. One of them being and then it took a walk-off winner to beat the Phillies in one of those games in the final 13. So that was that. It was a walk-off. I believe Matt Kemp hit it. So, but anyway, they lost 2 out of 3 to the last place Phillies. But then they swept the Mets at New York. That was the bigger thing. It was that it was on the road when they swept them, and this was coming off losing 2 out of 3 to 2 last place team in the Padres and the Phillies. So now, is this a turning point for the Dodgers, or is it just the Mets becoming very terrible right now? Well, I mean, the Mets have been known to do this. They have a good first half of the season, and then the bats go cold. The pitching starts to unravel, and then you get the New York Mets in the second half of the season as they have lost 8 of their last 9 games. Most of those are the Braves and Nationals. They've only won once, and it was 9-5 against Washington. So, I mean, is this the beginning of the end for the Mets? I think so. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, they were having such a good story, but it looks like it's going to run out. The Dodgers, though, they're a game and a half behind the Giants, and half a game out of the wild card spot, which is the second one's being currently held by the Braves right now. So they got to be careful about that. But so if the Dodgers offense keeps going, they could take that wild card spot, but it all depends on their offense, or really more so their pitching. The pitching has let them down more than anything, especially that one Padres game where the pitcher was like not even looking, and then look, he's stealing home. Oh, I overthrew it. But anyway, the Giants though they struggled early in the week. They got swept. No wait, I'm looking too early in the week. I'm sorry. But they still okay. I take that back. The Giants are actually doing pretty good this week. They won 2 out of 3 against the Braves, and then 2 out of 3 against the Phillies. So they're still trucking along. So as long as they keep up this pace, they should be pretty good. They do have a 3-game series against the Padres coming up. Also a 3-game series against the Dodgers at home. So this could be a very critical series for the NL West. So I think whoever wins that series could take the division. I could be wrong. It's still kind of early, but I mean, it's a critical division deciding who's going to take the NL West. That's all I got to say about that. And so now I'll go on to the NL Central. The Reds, They've swept the Brewers. It shouldn't be much of a surprise anymore that the Reds are probably going to take the NL Central this race unless the Cardinals can pose a comeback. I'll get to the Cardinals in a minute. But the Reds, they're still chugging along, beating the Brewers, and Milwaukee's just having an average year, and they didn't even have a home run either. They did it without getting home runs. Imagine that. It was just plain old fashioned baseball. I'm just gonna hit the ball, and we did it. Good job, good job. You be proud, be proud. And before that, they split with the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are catching up. So, but I'll get to them in a minute. First, I want to get to the surprise of the National League, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yeah. But anyway, they swept the Miami Marlins and did so pretty decisively too. This Pirates team, I'm starting to become more and more a believer in them each week. They could be that surprise team that makes the playoffs this year. I mean, I might discredit them later on, but they're a good team. There's nothing else you can really say about it. And sooner or later, I think they're going to take them for real with the power of McCutchen and company. They look pretty good as they took 2 out of 3 from the Rockies. I know it's the Rockies, but still 2 out of 3, and they swept the Marlins. And I know the Marlins ain't that great, but their schedule's actually kind of easy for the rest of the month. I mean, they got a 3-game series against the Cubs at home, and then they got 4 games against the Astros, and then another series against the Cubs. I mean, you can't complain about that schedule at all if you're a Pirates fan. So I guess in some cases you got to be excited, and you're on a 5-game winning streak, so get on that. And the Marlins are now on a 5-game losing streak. I find that kind of funny too. So, and now we go on to the St. Louis Cardinals, who just swept the Cubs in a pretty simple series. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but the Cardinals are still 5 games out of first, 2 games out of a wild card, and the wild card spots, by the way, still held by the Pirates and Braves. What else do I need to get? Well, the Diamondbacks, they're catching up as they swept the Astros pretty decisively, and the Diamondbacks have now cut it off. Well, they're still 6 games back from first place and 5 games to the wild card, so it's not much, but still, Chris Young's coming along now. He's getting his little rhythm, and the Astros, well, they're on a 6-game losing streak. This is not a really good week if you're an Astros fan. And on that note, I do have a trade to talk about, so let's get to it. The Blue Jays and the Astros, okay, they did a 10-player trade. The Blue Jays got J.A. Happ, Brandon Lyons, David Carpenter in exchange for Francisco Cordero, Ben Francisco, along with 4 minor league prospects and a player to be named later. I'm not sure who this helps out more. I mean, J.A. Happ was he's an alright pitcher. Brandon Lyons can be a good closer. He's not the greatest one, and David Carpenter, not the David Carpenter I know, but Francisco Cordero. I mean, Francisco Cordero, he's a great closer. I mean, he's blown a couple this season, but he's a pretty good closer. And Brent Francisco isn't. He's a pretty solid ball player. And I know the Astros are really doing this to get young people. They're trying to rebuild, getting 4 minor league prospects to be and some guy to be named later. But I mean, we all know the Astros. They're a team for the future. They're not a team for the present. So, I mean, I can't really decide if this helps really the Blue Jays at all or this hurts them because they don't really have the pitching, and Cordero was actually a pretty good closer. But I mean, to each his own, I guess. To each his own. So that is that. And so as we go down to the standings, basically a basic rundown. The Red Sox still swept the Brewers. They're still in first. The Nats split with the Braves to keep a 3.5-game lead. The Mets got swept, and they're going further down the spiral as they're 1-9 in their last 10 games. The Dodgers are now only half a game away from a wild card spot and a game and a half from first, with a big series against the Giants coming up soon. The Pirates are hot and on a roll, and they got a really novice schedule coming up, and things are looking up for Pittsburgh fans. So there's really not much else to say. So I'm gonna try to do this again next week. Leave thoughts below. Leave predictions below. I want to see what other people think about this. What's going to happen? Do you think the Dodgers will overtake the Giants? Do you think the Nationals have what it takes to go to the World Series? Leave thoughts below. Let's get this interested. Let's get this interesting.